from people I've talked to at the Combine, the NFL people seem to only have one thing in common. They all seem to find Shedeur Sanders to be a bit off-putting.
Yeah.
Josiah Anderson, the reporter, she had tweeted about how she kind of, didn't like hearing so much about the ways that people were talking about Shaduer and the ways that people were talking about him being brash and, being a bit arrogant and all of those things. But it was such a broadly applied opinion of him that he's not good enough to be that. Right? Like he is looking right now to be a late first round pick. I don't like the idea of draft stock and everything else. But when I talk to the people I actually trust about this, we're talking about maybe late first round pick. You ain't gonna be putting your watch in nobody's face as a late first round pick. It's just not gonna work.
Yeah. Every couple of years, it might be every year, but every couple of years, there's some like racially coded analysis that is concerning and off-putting and unfair. Calling Shedeur Sanders brash, to me, like maybe they can't say it, but like, what is we talking about? That don't feel like a mischaracterization of the player that you might receive. Now, arguing that that's a bad thing is another question, because I don't think that, or there are plenty of quarterbacks in the league that are having success that are brash in a way that I think is probably off-putting. We just dig so deep into the stuff that doesn't matter. Can you ball? Your brash becomes marketable if you can ball. Your brash is annoying if you can't. Can you ball? The fact that you are in the Star Trek becomes interesting if you can ball. If you can't, you got too many outside interests. Like, we are looking for shit to talk about these players when none of that shit fucking matters. Can you play? If you can play, we make a story about how all the weird shit about you is cute. If you can't play, the weird shit is distracting. I don't know why we haven't caught up to this yet.
Well, but I think that there's like multiplier effects depending on where you are and how good in all of these things, right? And so I think with a quarterback, at the very least, they're thinking about and talking about these things a little bit differently, right? But if you are, okay, Josh Rosen is an interesting example because we have now forgotten that he ever existed. I was team Josh Rosen because it sounded like he was just a little bit too smart for those people, right? And I always loved that Josh Rosen, and those who don't remember, Josh Rosen's people was rich. Like, I want to say he wound up going to Wharton, but if I'm not mistaken, he kin to the Whartons or whatever. But like, he come from stock. His parents are big time lawyers, and they was rich, right? Josh Allen installed a hot tub in his dorm room when he got there. Amazing. I'm like, okay, we're that guy. And I actually found when I would see interviews with him, I was like, oh, he is maybe a little bit too smart for this world in a lot of ways, but he seemed okay. But if he were a number one overall pick, good, that wouldn't have been an issue. Instead, he's in graduate school right now or business school. Yeah, I think he's in B school. But either way, he's like 27, and that's where he is right now. Yeah, the personality part, we start talking about that once we start getting to the margins and start getting to the fringes. And the truth is, they have tried to make it it's a Shaduer or Cam who you got. After the Combine, it sounds like nobody's going to do that anymore. It's a Cam Ward and then everybody else. That's why I say Tennessee's taking Cam Ward number one unless somebody really, really backs up the truck, because he's the only one that seems to be a quarterback that people really believe can happen in this draft. I don't know with Shaduer, like you said, what is the reasonable expectation? How does this go? Like, I'm curious because I don't think he goes in the first round.
Yeah. Wow.
I personally, and maybe not everybody feels this way, right? But if that dude's still out there at 20, he the lonely barber, dog. Go ahead and wait till that thing get a little bit cheaper.
You think that his personality and connection with obviously his father who's coaching, like, you think that weighs into the decision making? Because I got to be honest, if I were a coach, it would be on my mind. It would be something I would consider. It's like, I don't need this.
I think you just put it in the way that I was struggling to as I was talking in that circle there a second ago. The coach that has to be the one to put up with this off-putting person that might not be that good, then yeah, it does matter, right? If you're the person I got to spend the most time with, we're going to be up in here at night. Oh, this is going to be a thing. My thought, though, as it relates to Dion, is this one. Dion's not a fool.
Yeah.
And I think Dion knows he's not going to be able to force the action. He got his own team to coach now, right? I don't think you'll hear that much Dion in the media if Shaduer isn't playing well or isn't used right or whatever. I don't think that'll happen because, and maybe I'm being wildly optimistic about this because I know parents can be different about stuff, right? But I think he knows that doesn't help.
But maybe he won't be explicit, but he got more relationships. And you know how this game works sometimes. He got more relationships and influence in media, sports media, and maybe the NFL, depending on the coach, than almost every coach in the league. And so that would be kind of like the whole news cycle around should the Cowboys hire Dion Sanders?
True.
That was Dion Sanders, man. I mean, Jerry played into it because Jerry also, like, I don't believe, all the people that I talked to, no one believed that it was a real possibility. They understood that both of these entities know how to play this game. And we also are hungry for that. To your point about the Nico trade, we need something. And if there's a dead period and Dion Sanders say something, then it's going to become, it'll be, particularly if it's not a big market team, that is going to be he say one thing, that's going to be the storyline for your season. Every time you get onto the big networks, because we ain't going to talk about you otherwise, it's going to be when they going to play Shedeur. Remember when Dion said, or Dion didn't say, someone's going to say the shit that Dion wants to be said. Like that, I'd be concerned about it.
I think where the Dion factor is going to come up is I think he probably should. I'm kind of not a fan of these grown men having their parents maneuvering their careers, but trying to make sure Shaduer lands somewhere that is conducive to his own success, I think, is where Dion will be most invested. My guy Lance Zierlein had Shaduer in his mock draft going at the end of the first round to Cleveland. No. Terrible. That's not going to be good for him. Dion seemed to be pretty cognizant when he would mention teams before of where he wanted Shaduer to play. It sounded like places that he thought would be good for a black quarterback. The problem is, as I recall, the places that he mentioned all got quarterbacks, black ones at that. I believe he discussed, because he talked about all the teams he played for. He talked about Atlanta. He talked about Baltimore. He talked about Washington. Sorry, the brothers already got that one. All three. 3 for 3. 3 for 3.
Given what you're saying about it and how the tides have turned, like it'd be great. And the problem is, anytime you draft a quarterback in the first round or second round, probably also, unless the guy in front is balling, there's going to be a timeline on it. Like, what would be awesome for them is if he went to the Rams. Like, he was hanging around, he was late to the Rams. Somewhere with a coach that's stable and knows what he's doing with quarterbacks, a quarterback that is obviously on his way out soon, and a situation that you can build up around him. Like, to your point, he needs to go somewhere that's conducive to his success. And based on the evaluations right now, he's not a savior. Don't put him in a bad spot, and don't put him behind a shitty quarterback, because that's going to be bad for everybody.
I don't see enough dudes I've ever really heard of, to be honest, for this draft to be a truly interesting one. This college football season, I think, was interesting because there were so many like underclassmen. For example, I think the best receiver in college football, he ain't even going to be in next year's draft. That boy Smith.
Yeah, Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Williams, who out there playing like a ghost, he ain't even going to be in next year's draft.
They're going to be around long enough for when their draft comes up. They're going to be interesting and exciting players. The thing about the NFL draft, though, that's different from basketball draft, is I guess the only other one that we really care about, is the whole draft kind of matters. We just don't know it.
Yes.
And so, like, saying that it doesn't matter is not true. Like, in football, a lot of teams are determined by some really great drafts that happen with guys whose names we don't know today. So the draft is really interesting and important, but it can get kind of dull and boring because we don't know none of these people.
Yeah, you got to study too hard for the NFL draft. Like that's like them people who are real draft guys, like my buddy Michael Smith. Michael Smith is a draft guy. He gets all the books. He loves everything about it. You just have to love it. I don't care nearly as much because my thing is if you doing all that research for your team, you going to tell yourself you love whoever they take. That's how this work every year because ain't no point in saying that you don't.
It doesn't make sense. And the more research you do, the more reasons you find to like somebody. But the reason why, we were talking about defining characteristics before, and like to me, at least, the defining characteristic about football is the reason why the draft is so hard to prepare for, and it's the reason why I think football is so interesting, is because it's not a complicated game, but it's a complex game. In that, if you watch a basketball game, everybody's playing the same position. I know we think like, yeah, centers and point guards are different, but functionally, everyone can score, everyone can play defense, everyone can shoot, everyone can pass. That's how all sports are kind of like soccer, lacrosse. I mean, with the exception of baseball, I guess, hockey. Like,
no, but even then, you're doing the same stuff, just at different places.
Right. But all these sports, I was just saying that all those kind of sports are kind of the same. Those net sports are kind of the same goddamn game. It's all fucking handball. But football is 10 different sports happening at the same time, at least 4 or 5. Like, so in order to watch a basketball game, you can see a guy and like, all right, yeah, I'm watching 10 guys and I'm watching for these things. Football, you like, man, the things that requires for a left tackle to be good have nothing. Like, you have to be an expert on left tackle play. Like, from tackle to guard, it's kind of different. Not even to mention, like, from tackle to cornerback or receiver. So, like, yeah, it's almost impossible. And then it's 22 guys on the field at a time. It's really hard to be excited about these drafts and watch enough and know enough to make sense of it.